once again, this is the opportunity for any questions that you might have, particular doubts or things that have come up. So please don't be shy. This is the time for you to raise whatever issues or questions that would be useful to talk about. Yes. You can wait for the microphone so that everyone can hear your question.
While doing walking meditation, we observe sensations, sound produced by feet touching the ground. But at the same time, birds are singing, crows are making noise. So can we see all the present events, or we should observe only one event at a time?
As I've been saying today, if the attention is focused fairly steadily in the present, then it's a useful exercise to open up the attention to be receiving all of the different sensory impressions. So the sounds of the birds, the colours of the grass, the trees, the buildings, and just to allow that flow of perceptions to arise and pass away. It's like in this very moment, we're seeing, we're hearing, we have the perception of this hall is in our minds. So to be aware of the fact that there is sight, sound, feeling, and so forth, arising and passing away in the field of awareness in this moment. And to sustain that quality of unentangled awareness, or I like to call it an unentangled participating, because the very means whereby the mind is experiencing is part of the field of experience. Does that make sense? So the Buddha said that whereby one is a perceiver of the world and a conceiver of the world, that is called the world in this Dhamma discipline. And what is it whereby one is a perceiver of the world and a conceiver of the world? It is the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. That is that which whereby one is a perceiver of the world and a conceiver of the world. Lokasanyi is perceiver of the world. Lokamani is a conceiver of the world. So if you're into philosophy, the Buddha was probably the original phenomenologist. So the only world that we can know, the only world we can meaningfully talk about is the world of our experience. We can hypothesize or create ideas, but other perceptions, but the world we know is the world that our mind produces as a representation. So with Vipassana meditation, there's a recognition of, this is my mind's version of the world, rather than this is the world, this is this mind's version of the world. So your language, your gender, your education, your family experiences, your personality, what you ate for lunch today, all of those things, the weather, all of those things will contribute to the way that the mind forms its image of the world. So, and this is one of the great blessings of Vipassana meditation, is when I recognize what I experience is not the world, but my mind's version of the world, it's much easier for me to respect that other people have a different version. And that, so then, by recognizing that the world is a subjective experience, then I can say, well, his version of the world is not the same as mine, so of course he will see things differently, she will express things differently. They all have different tastes and different perspectives. So please.
while doing walking meditation, what should be the position of the hand? It should be forward or backward.
Wherever you're comfortable. As long as they're on the end of your wrists, that's okay. It's a joke. It's there's no thing fixes where you are comfortable. So in England, it's often you're doing walking meditation in the ice and the snow. So that's the most appropriate position for your hands. But in front or behind, it's whatever you're most comfortable with, because it's the mind is the most important thing.
Can we do the walking meditation with air putting?
Oh yes, of course.
Because there is more sensation.
Yeah, again, because of living in England most of the time, I'm more used to doing walking meditation with sandals or boots on. But walking with barefoot is very helpful. The kind of feeling of the feet as they meet the ground is a little bit more sensitive.
In the context of self-view, in your book, The Breakthrough, you've spoken about the location of self, or the absence of a location. Now, when one tries to have an awareness, usually the center of awareness is the body in health specification. Would you please elaborate and also help us see how can we come out of the self-view?
How many hours have we got? Well, it's a good question. I first started to notice this aspect of locatedness, or the aspect of place, if you like. After I'd already been a monk for a long time, so probably I'd been a monk about 20 years before I noticed that. Because I've been doing Vipassana meditation and doing a lot of retreats at a time for many years. And it was on a particular 3-month-long retreat where after 3 or 4 weeks my mind was very quiet, and I was able to sort of observe the arising and passing of different phenomena and experiences very easily and very clearly. And I began to notice there was this kind of constriction or kind of tension in the mind, and it was surprising. I thought, this is interesting, because the mind is particularly clear and particularly quiet, and it's really easy just to watch perceptions or thoughts coming and going. What is this kind of stressing or this tension in the system? And then and I was exploring that for 2 or 3 days, 3 or 4 days. What is this? Because I couldn't really identify what that was. And it suddenly the insight arose, it's all happening here. There's a way that the mind is making this kind of a place where everything is being experienced. It's, even though there might be no sense of self that was obvious, those experiences of not self were happening here. So it's a very subtle point of practice. But it was one of those moments where as soon as it was identified, and again I was using a lot of yoniso manasikara, that wise reflection, to explore it. But as soon as it was identified, right, aha. And so I began to use that way of clarifying that sense of how the mind is creating a place. Because if you consider it, the body, the rupa khanda, exists in 3-dimensional space. The world of form, this body, this building, this place, the physical world, 3-dimensional space, backwards, forwards, up, down. That has a meaning in relationship to the world of form, rupa khanda. But in terms of the namakandas, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness, three-dimensional space does not apply. That's just offering that for consideration. But mind doesn't have any substance; it has no material form. Even there, like a photon, a little part, a photon of light, or even a neutrino, which have no mass, or which sort of pass right through things. They still have a physical existence in a physical location, but mind has no physical location. You can't say mind goes this far and stops, and then that mind comes out this far, and that mind stops here, my mind stops there. Place doesn't really have any meaning in relationship to the nama khandhas, the world of mind. So that I began to reflect on those kind of teachings, and then as I began to consider them, I realized that was quite obvious in the Buddha's teachings, but I hadn't really noticed it. So then I began to use reflections like, where is this being experienced? Or a question like, where is here? Where is here? And so that, just like with these, when I was describing about the use of reflection in developing the insight into anicca, dukkha, anatta, that when you ask a question like, who is hearing, it's because when the mind is very clear, very quiet and still, it's something in the wisdom faculty knows who is the wrong question. Then it also knows where is the wrong question. Place doesn't really apply. And so then in that way of challenging that assumption, then it falls apart. And there's a particular teaching in the Udana, the verse in the inspired utterances of the Buddha, and maybe I quoted it in the past. There's that section of the book that I can't remember, but where the Buddha talks about the nature of the unborn, unconditioned, uncreated reality. He says, there is the unborn, the unconditioned, the uncreated. If there was not the unborn, the unconditioned, the uncreated, then liberation from the born, the conditioned, the created, the formed would not be possible. But because there is the unborn, the unconditioned, the unformed, the uncreated, then liberation from the formed, the conditioned, the born, the created is possible. And then very close to that, there's these, very near that, it's in section 8 of the Udana, Pakali village. And he says there is that ayatana, that sphere of being, where there is no sun, no moon, no stars. There's no coming into being, no disappearance, no coming, no going, no standing still. And so this is a rough recounting of it. So there is no coming, no going, no standing still. There's no dying, no reappearance, and this, I tell you, is the end of suffering. So that phrase, there is no coming, no going, no standing still, it can seem paradoxical when he's talking about that, but he uses this word ayatana. So that, in a way, is which is a fairly broad term, so it can mean a faculty. It's more like a zone of experience in this respect. There is that area of experience, and which you would call the unconditioned or the unborn. So when the mind awakens to that unborn, unconditioned, unformed aspect of its own reality, then there's no coming, no going, no standing still, no dying, no reappearance, so no time. So Ajahn Chah, who was a very, very gifted teacher, obviously unbiased, but in my humble opinion, he was an extremely gifted teacher, and he could take very subtle points of Dhamma and make them very accessible. So for a number of years, when people would come to visit, most Dhamma teachers, they have a particular theme that they will follow for a few years at a time. So for a few years, when people would come to visit Wat Pah Pong, this would be towards the end of Ajahn Chah's life, he would ask them a question. he'd say, if you can't go forward and you can't go backwards and you can't stand still, where do you go? And then they'd say, climb a tree. You can't climb a tree. Dig a hole? No, you can't go down, you can't go up either. You hop to the side, no, you can't go sideways, can't go forwards, can't go back, can't stand still, can't go to the side, can't go up, can't go down. Where do you go? And so he'd kind of put you on the spot, as it were, trying to see what the mind could come up with. And he'd say, the Dhamma is that quality of the heart, the citta, which is neither coming nor going nor standing still. And that if you try to answer that question in terms of self-view, in terms of identity or time or place, you can't solve the conundrum. So the only way that can be solved, that puzzle can be solved, is if the mind lets go of time, lets go of identity, lets go of location. So then forwards, backwards, and standing still don't apply. Like I and you don't apply, or before and after don't apply. So the only way that can be solved is if the mind awakens to that, what he would call the quality of non-abiding. And it was actually the very last teaching he gave to Ajahn Sumedho. Again, I might quote that in that book, I can't recollect, but during the Rains Retreat of 1981, I think it was, in 1981, then a letter came from Thailand to Chithurst Monastery in southern England, and it had been written by one of the Western monks who was staying with Ajahn Chah, and he said, "Dear Ajahn Sumedho, you're not going to believe this, but today Lumpur Cha asked me to take dictation, asked me to write down a letter for you, and so this is what he asked me to write." And what he wrote in that letter was, "Whenever you have feelings of love or hate for anything whatsoever, these will be your aids and partners in building paramita. The Buddha Dhamma is not to be found in moving forwards, nor in moving backwards, nor in standing still. This, Sumedho, is your place of non-abiding." And that was the last message he gave him. Then he had a stroke shortly after, and by the time Ajahn Sumedho went back to visit him, he couldn't really speak, couldn't move, couldn't communicate. So that was he knew that he was very, very ill, and that his health was precarious, and he'd never written a letter to any of his disciples before, I think, ever. But that is really, to me, that's really interesting. That's like the final instructions from the teacher is not, if you want to develop the Sangha properly, you should always do this, and this, and never do that, or that. But rather, what he pointed to was to awaken the mind to that quality of non-abiding. Then all of your decisions and your perceptions will come from that informed place. So I found this a very helpful reflection, because it on non-locality, because it reveals even the subtle kind of attachments that the mind has. And also another of the great masters in Thailand, Venerable Ajahn Mahabua, he describes his own experience of realizing arahatship. And he said it was after the funeral of Ajahn Mun, and he was practicing walking meditation, and this insight arose in his mind, which was very sort of clear realization, which was if there is a point or a center to the knowing anywhere, that is the essence of birth in some level of being. So if that quality of knowing has a center, or it has a place, that's where birth begins, that's where the ignorance arises, that's where the root of clinging begins. And then that was the sort of precursor of his full and complete enlightenment. So it's a significant insight. In terms of self-view, second part of your question, when we talk about self-view, sakaya ditti, the word sat means true or real. You're all Indians, so we figured this out already. Sakaya means the body or the person. Ditti means the view. Sakaya ditti. So it literally means the view of the real person. And so in ordinary English you'd say it's the belief that I am the body, I am the personality, this is who and what I am. Taking that to be an absolute fact. It's interesting, I don't know how it is in Indian languages, but the word person is very, very useful. It's a very kind of dharmic word because it comes from the Latin persona, meaning a mask, like you wear in front of your face. Per means through, sona is sound, persona, it's like what the sound goes through. So the person is a mask. It's right there, the clue is right there in the word. So I don't know, you say what's the Hindi for a mask? Mukhuta. So I'm not sure if that has the same kind of connotations, but that exploration of self-view as a presumption, is like believing that the mask is who and what you are. So that so many of the aspects of reflection, particularly with insight meditation, like we were doing in the chanting this morning, and we'll do this evening, going through the five khandhas and seeing them in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta, so that the form is not self. I think I would say, form is impermanent, feeling is impermanent, perception is impermanent, mental formations are impermanent, consciousness is impermanent, and so forth. Form is not self, feeling is not self, and so on. So that those reflections that the Buddha offered, and that comes directly from his second discourse, the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. That was the second discourse after the Buddha's enlightenment, given in the deer park in Varanasi. And that was the discourse that caused the full enlightenment of his first 5 disciples. That, in a way, that's kind of all you need to know about penetrating self-view. And that what's laid out there in the morning chanting and in the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta is really that kind of direct analysis of how we take the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness to be who and what we are. I am this body, I am a man, I'm a woman, I'm tall, I'm short, I'm old, I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm sick. The feelings, I'm comfortable, I'm uncomfortable, I'm hot, I'm cold. All of those I ams. Well, I am seeing, I'm hearing, I'm smelling, I'm tasting, I'm touching. I am perceiving. I hear, I feel, I see, I think. All of those I ams are what self-view is built from, and the unconscious belief that those are all absolute realities. Say that is red. I'm seeing the red of the carpet. That's something that I see. It is red. The mind that believes that as an absolute fact is the mind that's embedded in self-view. If there's the recollection of there's a seeing, and that color is called red in this set of perceptions, but that seeing is not really who and what I am. It's not a person. It's not a self. It doesn't belong to a self. Then there's a more accurate representation of what's being experienced. So that in terms of the using the meditation to break through self-view, that's what Vipassana meditation is about. Using those reflections on anicca, dukkha, anatta, and bringing them to bear on the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations like memories, ideas, emotions, moods, imagination, expectations, the whole range of mental feelings. And then vijnana, discriminative consciousness itself. It's using those say, qualities of anicca, dukkha, anatta to deconstruct the mask, to see other. The mind easily says, "I'm hearing that bird." Well, wait a minute. There's hearing, but what is it that's doing the hearing? I feel pain in my knee. Well, what is it that's feeling? And does that knee really have an owner? How can any aspect of nature own any other thing? How can anything really be owned? So then the framework that you have in looking at the mind and body in terms of the five khandhas, these are five rough groups of the body and mind, and then exploring that in relationship to the nature of experience, and seeing this is what the mind is doing, is taking these perceptions and thoughts and piecing it together and making it a kind of best guess. If you enjoy popular science books, literature, there's a lot of literature that talks about the way that the mind puts things together. There's a Malcolm Gladwell book called Blink, which is very interesting. Also, I recommend Oliver Sacks's book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. Yes, you heard that correctly. It's probably familiar to many of you. The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. So it's Oliver Sacks is a well-known neuroscientist, psychiatrist, and so the usefulness of these kind of books is it shows you the very fabricated nature of perception and how the mind puts together its version of the world, and they deal with, particularly the Oliver Sacks book, they deal with particular pathologies or distortions of perception when the world is not put together by one person in the same way as everybody else. But I find it's really helpful. I mean, they're both good writers, Malcolm Gladwell and Oliver Sacks, so they're very easy to read. But it really gives you a kind of gut level sense of, oh my goodness, my world is pieced together bit by bit, and it's not reliable. It's like if you're outside doing walking meditation in the dim light of the dawn, and the light is not clear. You're away from the lights by the pathway, and then you say, "Is that a person? Oh no, it's a tree. No, it's somebody's walking towards me. No, it's a tree. No, it's a person." And then the brain is trying to patch together a version of what's going on. It's sort of filling in the gaps as best it can, and then you realize, "Oh no, it's not a tree. It's my wife." So better not tell her that because she'll be upset. "Sorry, dear, I mistook you for a tree." Won't go down very well. So that fabricated nature of perception is really what insight meditation, vipassana, is helping the mind to recognize the concocted, fabricated nature of the world and what we think we are as a person, and how this, in a way, is helping you to function as a human being, as a person, but within the context of Dhamma, saying that well, this is just what I like to call a convenient fiction. That you call it red out of convenience, but it's not the blue one; it's the red one. If someone's colorblind, if they're red-green colorblind, they wouldn't know whether this was the red mat or the green mat, because they can't see the difference. They just look like different shades of brown to them. One of the monks at the Mahagiri monastery in California is completely red-green colorblind. So when he learned to drive, he had to learn the position of the lights, because the red and the green ones are just the same. So the red's at the bottom and the green's at the top. So if the one at the top is shining, then go. The one at the bottom is shining, stop. But they don't look different. So we say, no, red is red, and green is really different. It's green. But you can't, to someone who's colorblind, it's like, and you'd say, wow, this is really, like he was putting flowers on the shrine. He's quite good at flower arranging. You say, wow, those really are kind of great contrast. And he said, they are. So yeah, there's kind of red berries against the green leaves. Oh, they're red, are they? Oh, sorry. But it was any of the ways that we can recollect that. So vipassana meditation in a way, it's a skillful deconstruction of experience, but not in a chaotic way. But it's in a sense supporting that deconstruction of the experience of the person and the world, but held together in the context of Dhamma, so that you can see, well, it's a convenient fiction. It is a fiction, but it's a convenient one. So we're not all just called person, as Ajahn Chah would often say. We have these convenient fictions. We give ourselves names, because if everyone was just called person, it would get really difficult. Who's registered for this retreat? Well, there's person. And 9 people have to leave early. Which 9? Person. Oh, okay. That's clear. It's meaningless. So we have names to get by in the world, to function as a human group. But if we remember, well, that's not what I really am. It's just a convenient way of labeling things. Then it enables us to function much more comfortably and harmoniously in the world. To all of you, I am Ajahn Amaro. To my 2 dear sisters, I'm their little brother. Yeah, they don't call me Your Holiness or bow down to me, because they're my sisters. We're not associated because I'm a monk, because we have the same parents. We grew up together. We're a family. So in their perceptions, I'm not Ajahn Amaro, Abbot of Amaravati. I'm their little brother. So if I say to them, I am Ajahn Amaro, and when you meet me, you should bow down, I would get appropriate grief. They would let me know that was the wrong view. And they'd be right. It'd be like grasping an identity. And when the mind grasps an aspect of personality or identity, then suffering ensues. So, any more questions? There are a few people that have to leave because there was a change in the link for the retreat, so 9 people do have to depart today. So if any of the 9 have questions they want to ask before they depart, fire away. Yes?
You encourage us to approach meditation with the attitude of inquiry. How will this experience work? And at the top of the meditation slot, you also ask us to ask ourselves how are we feeling. So at the top of the meditation slot, I asked myself, and I came to know that I was agitated, confused, my mind was scattered. My question to you is, what can I learn from this?
Well, what you can learn is that sometimes the mind is scattered. And that you can be aware of a scattered mind. It's one of the aspects in the Satipatthana, the foundations of mindfulness, in the 3rd section, which is called Cittanupassana. This is an area that, so particularly Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Sumedho would focus on in terms of Satipatthana, is you can be mindful. It says, knowing that the angry mind is angry, knowing the mind free of anger is free of anger. Knowing the agitated mind as agitated, knowing the mind that's unagitated as unagitated. Knowing the the expanded mind is expanded, or the contracted mind is contracted. And knowing the exalted mind is exalted, and the unexalted mind is unexalted. So you, in that, is a very, very helpful teaching, because even when the mind is scattered and confused, that which says, my goodness, my mind is really scattered today, that which knows scatteredness is not scattered. That which knows anger is not angry. So that in that establishment of mindfulness, you're not identifying with the content of the mental formations, with the different sankharas of thinking and mood and emotion and so on. But instead the mind is clearly aware of those qualities, but is not identified with them. So that your mind can be if you're sick and you have a fever, you can be hallucinating, and you can be fully aware of the mind filled with all sorts of weird images. A number of years ago, I was given some medicine for a particular illness I had, and it gave me these auditory hallucinations, like for the sound. And I was living in this little kuti in the forest in Abhayagiri monastery, and it was the winter time, so there was a little stream that flowed past the kuti, and I could vividly hear the sound of Beethoven being played by the stream, like a full orchestra. And then the next day it'd be Wagner, and then Led Zeppelin. And it was absolutely distinct. You're sitting there, the mind is quite clear, and you're hearing da 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 da. There is no orchestra outside my kuti. It's just the sound of the water. But the mind would take it and weave it into a very, very clear auditory hallucination. So I could be aware that the mind is creating something that is not there. There is no orchestra in the forest. So even as a hallucination, the mind could be fully aware of that it knows there's a distortion, and that which knows the distortion is not distorted. So that this is a very, very important skill to develop. And so that the mind, the recognition of, oh look, my mind is really scattered, or I'm feeling really sad. That which knows sadness is not sad. That which knows excitement is not excited. Now, we spend a lot of money trying to absorb into our emotions. People get paid crores and crores of rupees to make films that make people completely absorbed in their emotions. To make you cry, to make you laugh, to make you cheer. And the more completely they can get the audience to absorb, the more money they make. That's the craft or a good author, like a skilled author, that they can draw your mind into the story so you're completely lost in the plot. What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? They write a page turner. So again, they make piles of money because of that skill. So that what we're doing in a way is kind of interrupting their craft. So that you're training your mind to not get lost in the plot, to not get carried away by the movie, to not get completely swept up by the feeling of sadness or excitement, or, irritation, but rather to be fully aware of those perceptions, those moods, those states. Part of us, that which likes to take refuge in self-view, likes to get lost. Likes to be lost in a good book. We pay good money. That's why those authors and those movie directors, they make a lot of money, because part of us really enjoys that, being absorbed, being carried away. Oh, it was great, I completely forgot myself. Right? But it's only enjoyable because our usual perceptions of ourselves are so negative. We want to get away from ourselves. That's why people drink. They want to forget themselves. They take drugs or take alcohol, drink alcohol to get away from their own mind. So what we're doing with meditation is learning how to get a perspective on those mind states, and also to learn how to enjoy your own mind, to develop a mind which is a lovely place to be, you're not having to always get away from it. To drink something or eat something or do something to fill your mind up. The whole idea of a pastime, I don't know how you'd say that in Hindi, but just something to do to fill the time, right? The whole concept of a pastime is so that you don't have to be with yourself. But in terms of Buddhist practice, if there's no sense of self, it's impossible to be bored. Boredom depends on the sense of self-view. So if self-view has been penetrated, it's impossible to be bored. And the mind is very comfortable in its own presence. You're not trying to get away from yourself, to want to be someone else. The mind is that is awake to Dhamma is comfortable with its own nature, is totally at home with its own nature. It's not trying to be something else or get somewhere else or be filled with some other perception. So what you're describing in terms of watching the mind being agitated, it might not seem like very much, but it's a first step on the way to developing that kind of profound mindfulness and wisdom, whereby you develop that foundation of mindfulness, the Chittanupassana, whereby the mind is fully aware of an agitated mind state, or an angry mind state, or a lustful mind state, or a fearful mind state. That which knows fear is not afraid. That which knows lust is not lusting. That which knows anger is not angry. So that the more that we train the mind in mindfulness and that we develop the practice, then the easier it becomes to let go of the object that the mind gets irritated by or afraid of or is desiring, and is able to know, oh, this is the feeling of lusting, this is the feeling of fearing, this is the feeling of hating. And it's not caught up in that, it's not entangled in that. The feeling might still be there, it doesn't just sort of switch it off. But like if you're feeling sad, someone in your family has passed away, there's a grieving. The sadness is still going to be there, but there's also a quality of aware. This is the heart is feeling really sad, sorrowful because this person has passed away. So that there's still that emotional tone. But what's different is that the mind is not absorbed in that, not lost in that. There's no wrongness there. It's not like you need to get rid of it or it shouldn't be there. So that even though there's a sad feeling, the heart can be completely at peace with it. Even with anger, one of the great spiritual masters of Thailand, Nopo Dung, when he was very old, one of his disciples asked him, Lumpur, and he had the reputation of being an arahant, said, Lumpur, this might be impolite for me to ask, but do you still experience anger? And he said, oh yes. He said, it arrives, but I don't accept it. Like the postman makes a delivery, but you don't sign for it. So return to sender. But yeah, it appears, but it doesn't have a landing place. I don't accept it. So that this is in a way, it's one of my readings of the scriptures, and particularly the interactions of the Buddha with Mara. In the Buddhist suttas, you often have Mara coming along to try and trick the Buddha or tempt him, frighten him or irritate him. Even long after the Buddha's enlightenment, Mara keeps coming along to try and tempt the Buddha or trick him. And the way that I read that is that the words of Mara when he comes along, it's thoughts that are arising in the mind of the Buddha. So that at one time he's sitting up in the Himalayas and meditating, and this Mara comes along and says, if you wanted to, you have the ability, the psychic power, you could turn the whole Himalayan mountain range into solid gold. If you wanted to, you could do that. And then the Buddha said, I know you, Mara. It's true, I could do that, but even twice that amount of gold would not be enough for one person's greed. I know you, Mara. So, or in a similar situation, when Mara again comes to the Buddha when he's sitting in the Himalayas, and he says, you have the ability, you could establish total mastery over the whole world. You have the skill, the intelligence, the power, the reputation. You could rule the whole world, if you wanted to. And the Buddha said, I know you, Mara. And and he said, that it's impossible for me to rule the world. No, Mara said, no, you could do it. You could rule the world totally in accordance with Dharma. You could govern in a completely righteous, totally Dharmic way. You could do it. You're special. You're really something extraordinary. You could do it. And the Buddha said, I know you, Mara. He said, if you're in a position of governing, necessarily you're going to have to imprison people, you're going to have to sequester people's property, you're going to have to lock people up, you're going to have to go to war with your neighbours for one reason or another. It's impossible to govern in a totally righteous, in a totally dharmic fashion. It's an interesting commentary on politics. So he said, I know you, Mara, there's no possibility for me to take up a political leadership. And so, on your way, Mara. So that, to me, that's a way of, those thoughts is a kind of mythological framework. It's using a mythic form of the Buddha having a conversation with this being called Mara. But in some ways, I feel it's accurately representing the thought arising in the mind of the Buddha. In the stories, it's put up as sort of Mara, the evil tempter. I will fool him this time. But I feel it's just a way of representing an unskillful thought arising. I think I could govern righteously. But then, as soon as that thought forms, then immediately the insight arises. No, I couldn't. And exactly why it couldn't work. But it's, I feel, and maybe it's heretical to say so, but I feel it's because the Buddha gets represented as absolutely no unwholesome thought or feeling could possibly arise in his mind. But I feel that in the scriptures, that's exactly what Mara's appearances are representing. They're the Buddha's passing thoughts or impulses, and how they're immediately recognized. So, like Lupo Dun saying, the postman comes with a parcel, but I don't accept it. But it's like, the Mara comes along and says, you could turn the whole into solid gold if you wanted. He said, yeah, but so what? That wouldn't be enough. Twice that amount would not be enough for one person's greed. And more over here.
When and how to practice Amaro meditation?
Whenever you want. Don't do it while you're driving a car. Or if you're a train driver, then
In the Vipassana courses, typically the norm is like for the initial 3 days, like in a 10-day retreat, you practice it Anapana for the first 3 days, and subsequently you do some meditation, focusing on the sensations, observe the sensations. So the instructions are like we do Anapana mainly to develop concentration.
You can do Anapanasati anytime. So the Buddha talked about it. He said it was what he considered a delightful abiding place. So the Buddha would often do Anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, because he just enjoyed following his breath. It was just a pleasant thing to be doing. So you can. It's any period of meditation, any day, any time. As I said, I wasn't really joking. So don't try and do it while you're driving your car. You need to pay attention to the road. Out of compassion to you and your passengers and the other people on the road. But no, I think it's helpful to consider the format of a 10-day retreat and the systematic nature of how a 10-day retreat is set up. Now, as I said, I've never done a Goenka retreat, so I don't really know. But from direct experience, so I know that there's a very fixed system. You have the same talks given every day, and there's a system of practice similar with Mahasi Sayadaw style retreats. There's a very systematic format. But I think it's important to recognize that's just one of an uncountable range of possibilities. Just within the Pali Canon, you have 40 different meditation objects, different meditation methods, and and then how we use them, how we apply them, is really up to the individual. It's like, what color jacket should you wear? Which trousers should you put on? What kind of shirt should you wear? It's like, well, it's not really should. It's just what fits me, what's useful, what I found in the shop, what my mother gave me for my birthday. It's just what each person can choose for themselves. So I encourage an attitude of experimentation. And if you find that it's helpful to do some period of Anapanasati every day, do it every day. So you use it and find out for yourself. So that it's the different methods that are described. We can be very respectful of the teacher and the teaching, and so want to do things in a quote unquote the right way, or be obedient to the instructions. But we can sometimes be over obedient. We can be just not taking initiative, or just not using our own intelligence, and so sometimes you say, well, 20 years ago my teacher told me I should always follow my breath like this, and I've been doing it every day since. How come I haven't got anywhere with my meditation? And that kind of. I'm actually quoting somebody when I say that. So they've had some instruction, and they've been faithfully following that because of their sincerity and their wish to be a good student. But in that, they've unconsciously put aside their own experience and their own capacity to recognize what's helpful, what's not helpful. In the Buddha's teaching on the Iddhipada, what's called the 4 bases of success. If you want to succeed at anything, whether it's running a business, or driving a car, or cooking some food, or establishing a meditation, there are 4 qualities that need to come together. First is you need to have desire, you need to be interested, you have to have enthusiasm, you have to want to do it, you have to want to cook, want to drive a car, or want to meditate. So chanda is the first one. You have to be interested. Virya, you need to apply energy. You have to actually get in the car and learn how to and put energy into doing it. Chitta, you have to learn how it works. You have to think about it. You have to get the mind around what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. If you want to cook a meal, okay, have you got the ingredients? Where are things stored? How much time have I got? You have to think things through. So those three all come together. So interest, energy, and consideration. So you need to be interested to do it, apply energy to do it, and think about how you're going to do it. Those three work together. Then the fourth one, is kind of after those first three have been applied, is called vimamsa, and that means reviewing. Did it work? Did I manage to cook the food? Did my meditation bring my mind towards clarity and peacefulness? Did I manage to learn how to drive the car? What was the result? So we can be very faithful and sincere in following instructions and completely forget the vimamsa part of it, because we're being so obedient, so dutiful. The teacher said I should do this, so I'm doing it. And being a good pupil, which is not to be despised or looked down on. But if we don't use the vimamsa, then there's no feedback. There's no what's the result of my efforts? Okay, I wanted to. Here we are at the Balaji Nigrodham Center. We want to get back into Delhi. And if we go out of the exit and we drive north, I don't think you'll find yourself in Delhi. You'll find yourself out in the countryside, right? I think so, because it's the wrong direction. You can be very mindfully, quote unquote, driving. Why am I outside the signs of Delhi? I'm driving carefully driving, watching out for all the other people on the road, and you're mindfully driving, carefully driving in the wrong direction. The vimamsa is like, that's saying Chandigarh. That's not Delhi. I'm on the wrong road. Chandigarh tells me I'm heading in the wrong direction. Turn around, go back. So the vimamsa is a crucial element in that. What's the effect of what I've been doing? Has it worked? Does it not work? And then that gives you feedback about how to take things from there. Yes.
So I wanted to ask you how to establish a positive relationship with chronic body pain. Chronic. Because how much of acceptance is enough? Because one tends to get tired of, and when one gets frustrated, there are a range of emotions. Sometimes you're a good meditator, quote unquote, and sometimes you see yourself scattered, as one person just said, and you're like, I'm out of my depth. You just give up. And then, but there's no escaping the body.
Correct.
So have I answered what I'm asking already?
Probably. Well, it's interesting that the Buddha experienced chronic pain. If you look at the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha's story of the Buddha's last days, it begins with him saying, Ananda, my body is like an old cart held together with strings and straps, and it's just it's like a broken down old vehicle. It's just sort of held together with makeshift repairs. He said, the only way I can experience comfort is to completely absorb my mind into emptiness. So if he was paying attention to the body, he was in pain. So if that's any consolation, the Buddha was another chronic pain sufferer. But he knew how not to make it into a problem. So he didn't spend his whole time absorbed into emptiness. But he was still talking to people and walking around and making the whole journey. He walked from place to in the last months of his life. He walked to many of the different viharas that he established to go and see different groups of people, different sadhus. So he didn't just sort of disconnect. So in terms of us ordinary human beings dealing with chronic pain, then I feel that the teaching on the arrow is the two arrows that I mentioned a couple of days ago, is extremely helpful. And you probably took note of that when I was saying it. But that's really the essential teaching, because the first arrow is unavoidable. That if you've got a body and a mind, then you're going to experience pain. And obviously, the chronic physical pain is an extreme situation of that. But that's the first arrow, is the physical pain. And so when we talk about the ending of suffering, it doesn't refer to the first arrow. You know, if you think, well, even the Buddha had chronic pain, so he could not just will the pain away. And so that first arrow is not the suffering that represents is not the suffering that can be ended through wisdom, but it's the second arrow, which is all of the resenting, negotiating, stressing, fretting, the negativity around pain. That's the arrow that can be dodged, and that's the suffering that can be ended. So in this respect, then, to use the meditation, not to just try and switch the mind off so it doesn't feel the pain, but so that it can know the painful feeling and to find that quality of attitude where that is absolutely not a problem. So that's so that the second arrow is being dodged. So that, there the pain is there, and yet the mind is completely at peace with it. Because as I was saying about emotions, the mind that knows anger isn't angry. The mind that knows pain is not pain-filled. Also, it's helpful to give yourself a break now and again. So don't be shy to use medication if you need to. And sometimes we can be a bit too purist and think, no, I should meditate. And so we can cause a lot of suffering just over the shoulds. So we're in a naturopathic centre, but I'm not averse to using some good old drug, off-the-shelf drugs from time to time if there's a real need. So don't be, I would encourage you not to be too purist about it, but just use your own intuition. And when you hit those moments where this is enough, I need a break. And then some kind of skillful distraction or sort of kind of finding a way to take the attention off it, and it's quite okay, it's quite appropriate. Sometimes we can set the bar far too high for ourselves, and so that we feel like we're really failing. But just giving yourself a bit of a breather, go and watch a really compelling movie. Find a good book to get lost in for a little bit, just to.
That's the last thing I expected you to say. Watch a movie. But
no, it's true. I think it's we can be. We can be so high-minded, what I should do and how I should be, but then we make our lives unworkable, we make it miserable for ourselves. So just it's like knowing your own limits. One of the qualities of I was talking about the Sapurisa the other day, a good person. One of the qualities of a Sapurisa is that they know the right amount, matanyita. So that means that the right amount of time to wait, the right amount of patience, the right amount of food to eat, the right amount of pain to tolerate, the right amount of gritting of teeth, and just to then to be able to recognize, okay, that's enough. I think we need a break, and just being ready to put the mind somewhere else, and then you can choose a reasonably wholesome movie. But there's that knowing our own system, knowing what's workable. That's the right thing. So I see the time has slipped past 5:30, so a few people do have to be on their way. So we'll call the Q&A time to a close. There's a few good questions. And then the 9 people, person, 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 person.